Hey, Molly. I'd like to see if I could get in contact with you so that you're representing a group of women who is launching a suit against the state of Texas. I unfortunately have a heartbreaking story.
Had an ectopic pregnancy, was denied medication, resulted in my tube rupturing.
Use my story, use my son's life in any way you can.
When you have doctors feeling like they can't provide medical care, it is a dangerous situation.
That ultrasound is on your belly and it's showing a pregnancy, and you think it's your pregnancy. But it is not your pregnancy. It is the state's pregnancy.
I was still pregnant when I spoke with Molly because this is not okay.
Somebody had to file the first suit. There are a lot of people depending on me and my fellow plaintiffs and this lawsuit.
Good morning, Your Honor. Molly Duane from the Center for Reproductive Rights for the Plaintiffs.
All right, let's do this.
The testimony you will hear will demonstrate that the chilling of necessary medical care is real and ongoing.
Miscarriage was inevitable, and my doctor, she couldn't intervene.
Is it your contention the baby's heart stopped prior to the induction of labor?
I don't know when her heart stopped.
They didn't have to do that.
It was the most traumatic experience of my life. No, I can't tell you exactly what minute her heart stopped.
They're just trying to stop the testimony.
What we're asking for in this lawsuit is the bare minimum human decency requires.
I just kept telling myself and my baby that I'm so sorry.
At any time did Attorney General Paxton tell you that you couldn't receive an abortion?
You know, I never thought to ask him.
These cases are showing people what happens when you ban abortion, and it's not necessarily what they thought.
God, we're never gonna have a baby. To take my tubes out, it's a 2-week recovery. I'm not gonna have work or pay.
The stories are out there, and now they have to very publicly say, no, we are not on the side of pregnant women.
There's going to be a ton of human suffering. But I do believe that we're going to fix this in my lifetime.
And what we're facing today is truly, truly a major problem. And I want to thank Chelsea for really introducing me. We have been looking at this for far too long. And each and every one of us, I thank you for being here. And I thank you so. Every time I see you, I want to cry along with you, with all of you. This is one of the most extraordinary films that are out there right now, and everybody wants to see it. There is no question about it, so whatever we can do, but I'd like... Harriette, thank you for being here, and as a woman of the world who really knows how to help pull all this together. And welcome to Urban Center. God bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm fine.
You can turn off mic 5, or you can come take it from me so I don't lose it. Thank you all again for being here. You know, any smiles we have is because we're here in solidarity. But that was hard to see, wasn't it? Yeah. But that's why we're here, because we want to be able to create space for people to know the truth, to bring real stories to life. And you can't hide behind a piece of paper or legislation, hopefully, when you see what people's lives are like. So I would like to introduce you to the folks on the stage, and then we'll get into our conversation. We know our attorney, Molly. Thank you for, doing the work and making this happen and using your legal expertise in the way that you have so that we could bring this forward. We appreciate you. Chelsea Clinton, thank you and your mom for being executive producers on this film. It takes a lot to make something like this happen, many years of effort, and we appreciate the work that you've done for so long. And it counts a lot, and we appreciate you. Yes. our filmmaker, Maisie, who we've been email friends over the past 2 weeks, as Donna said, we have to bring this film here before the election. How many years have you worked on this project?
We started working on this
Microphone.
As soon as Roe was overturned, we started researching. Yeah, about 2.5 years.
Which is actually speedy for a documentary, but we appreciate you and thank you for all the hard work.
Thank you so much.
And we've invited Tanya Lewis-Lee here, who is a filmmaker herself. She created a film called Aftershock, which is a documentary that looks at Black maternal health care and the challenges faced with so many Black women in this space. And we wanted to make sure that we talk about the film plus. We're talking about the film and the future. Welcome, Tanya.
Thank you. Thank you, Harriet.
So we're going to talk, and we're also going to give an opportunity for you to ask questions. So we'll make sure that there's space for that as well. I'd like to start, Molly, with you in terms of when do you go from this is an issue to I'm going to fight the government and get people to rally in order to try to make change?
Sure. So I'll start off by saying that, first of all, you have to smile. Usually I like to sit in when people are watching to make sure that they laugh at my jokes. But it's because you have to bring some lightness to this work, otherwise it's just too heavy. So, I've been practicing law in reproductive rights for about a decade. So that was an interesting 10 years. We went on some journeys. There was a period of time where we thought, I remember saying to someone, I don't care what Justice Kennedy thinks, Hillary Clinton's going to be president. So, there was a time where we've had many, many ups and downs. But what was different after Roe was overturned is that for so many years, for decades, abortion and miscarriage have been so heavily stigmatized that people were afraid to talk about it. And it was very difficult to get individual pregnant people to come forward and tell their stories. But when Roe was overturned, if you were looking for them, stories like Amanda's were out there. And I remember looking at them and thinking, I have to make people see this. We're going to make them see. And so that's really where it started.
Chelsea, your mom was just invoked. Many of us thought that it was obvious that she was going to become the president, and it didn't happen. And we see now, the election's in a few days. And we don't know what's going to happen. I call this year the year of the woman, and I think whenever things are really bad, women often are called to help make things better. But even as there's a lot of power for women, we see this. We see that the government has the power over our bodies. From your perspective, with all that you've seen from growing up in leadership through your parents and now all the work that you're doing, if you had a barometer, what do we say about what women can do and what we should be doing now?
Well, Harriet, thank you. And Donna, thank you again for bringing us together. There are a few questions there, I think, Harriet, all really important ones, and I'll try to answer them. I think, first, because you mentioned the election, it's important to note that abortion rights are on the ballot in 10 states, including right here in New York, where we need to have stronger constitutional protections for women and pregnant people here than we currently have. Will be urgently important if kind of my civic and religious hearts forbid the election does not kind of go the way that I hope it does at a federal level on November 5th. And so, in the 10 states where abortion rights are really kind of on the ballot, and from Arizona to Florida, from kind of Missouri to Rhode Island to Montana, Nebraska, South Dakota, here in New York, Nevada, Colorado, I think I got them all. But if I forgot one.
That was pretty good.
Right? I think I got them all. All right, thanks, Molly. Really, I think, to your point about what can women do, we can talk to the people that we know who live in those states. And not only talk to women, but talk to men too. I think one of the really extraordinary achievements of the film that kind of Maisie and Abby have stewarded into existence is it's quite clear that abortion bans don't affect only women or pregnant people, but affect families and communities. And that also, being denied, a fundamental human right, a fundamental freedom, kind of an urgent healthcare need, also isn't something that happens only in a single point in time, right? There are ricocheted effects over lifetimes and actually over generations. And so I think, Harriette, really, the answer to your question about the election and kind of what can women do is we can talk, of course, to everyone that we know about the importance of voting in the kind of presidential election, kind of the gubernatorial and elections, kind of the congressional elections, but also really voting on the abortion rights and abortion amendments in the states where we'll have the chance to do so. And then kind of the other point that you ask about, sort of what's my barometer, is that I'm really grateful that you framed the question kind of as an American question, because something that Molly and Maisie have heard me really hammer on in the last couple weeks in particular is I have found it challenging, personally, as someone who is very proud to be a New Yorker and raising my kids here, but who's originally from Arkansas and very proud to have kind of grown up there. I find it really hard when people say to me, like, it's just so terrible what's happening to women in Arkansas. Or like those poor women in Texas. I'm like, this is what's happening in America.
Yeah.
Like, this is what we have permitted to happen in America. Like, this has to be something that we take responsibility for, because it's only the way that we're going to push through and push forward. Because as Tanya knows from her work with Aftershock, and for those of us who've been in this space for a long time, things also weren't great for women before the fall of Roe. And particularly not great for pregnant and postpartum women. And so we just have enormous work to do to try to not only get back to where we were, but to really actually live in a country that values kind of women and life and rights and freedom and liberty as much as at least we say we do.
Thank you. You mentioned New York, and part of the concern was doing an event here, maybe we're speaking, maybe it's navel gazing. We all share the same beliefs. Don't believe that. As you mentioned, it's on the ballot here too. We all need to vote and make sure that we tell everyone in earshot that you absolutely must vote. But one of the things, Maisie, that I think was so poignant about this film that is reminding me of something. There's a woman here, Carla, I'm going to call you out, Carla Otis. I saw her the other day, and we were talking about the election and about family. And she was sharing what is something that is true for a lot of people that I know, that they're family members who do not share the same beliefs for a lot of reasons. And one of those reasons is religion. That there are many people who are 100% anti-abortion because of their religious values. And if you look at every spiritual tradition in the world, they're all anti-abortion per se, but not what we just saw. Not what we just saw. And so what happened in the film, Maisie, that I thought was really powerful is that you brought to life real stories of people having real concerns. Whether you believe every person should have the right to abortion or not, this film showed people in health peril. And I think a lot of times when we see an actual story come to life, it could change a person's opinion. So I'm curious as to your approach to the filmmaking and what you hope people who, maybe even people in this room, were thinking absolutely not, no way, and what happens after they see it.
Well, when like I said, we jumped into making this film the day that Roe was overturned. I made another film that came out in 2016 about the last abortion clinic in Mississippi. And to touch on something that Chelsea already mentioned, things were already horrible then in terms of access. So the day Roe was overturned, we were overwhelmed with stories of individuals who couldn't get care. And as we did our research and stayed in touch with the Center for Reproductive Rights, who we've had a long relationship with, we realized we really wanted to focus on medical emergencies, because if the individuals in medical emergencies were not getting care, then no one was getting care, which is why we started to follow Molly and the plaintiffs in this lawsuit. And through doing that, we got to know some of the families, and you meet Amanda's family in this film. And when we went to film with Amanda's family, we had no idea what we were going to come away with. And that conversation transpired very, very naturally and was just so moving and powerful. And we've shown this film a number of times in Texas and in states that lean very red. And we continue to have people come up afterwards and say they had no idea that the care women in this film were receiving was actually abortion care, and that many of the people in the audience themselves had had some sort of care similar to what Amanda needed, where, you know, they thought it was just they thought it was a DNC, or they were getting some sort of care for a miscarriage, and that now knowing that was an abortion was hugely impactful for them and helped them feel like they could start talking about it publicly within their friend groups to their family members. And so I think something I'm very proud of with this film is that it has started those conversations amongst friend groups, amongst families, in places where oftentimes abortion just simply is not spoken about.
Thank you.
Can I add something to
Absolutely.
that real quickly? Sorry. You give the lawyer a mic, this is what happens. You know, I just want to say that it is a misconception that religious people don't get abortions.
I go to church every single week.
Right. Religious people.
And I support a woman's rights.
Yeah, thank you. Religious people get abortions at the same rates as everybody else. And there are some people who wouldn't want an abortion for themselves, but the vast majority think that the government doesn't have a place in involving themselves in what is ultimately a family decision. And so one of the things I'm trying to do every time I'm with this movie is say, look, you've been told it's political, you've been told it's a two-sides issue. It's really not. More than 70% of people think that this is something that families should decide with their medical providers. So sorry.
Thank you. Then thank you for making that point. It's interesting that, you know, we're supposed to be in a country that separates church and state. And yet this feels like a religious issue, or that feels like how it's being presented. And I'm glad that you made that differentiation. It's very important. Tanya, you made a film called Aftershock. You should all see it. It's on Hulu now. It shows something that I think most people got more awareness about when Serena Williams almost lost her life, having a child, you know, the most elite athlete, wealthy. How could it happen? We often hear about Black women and think they're poor, they don't have this, you know, and there's some devaluation that happens. Just in expanding this conversation a bit, it's just shocking how women, and Black women in particular, are devalued. I mean, that's kind of what we're seeing. Can you talk about what you learned in creating that film, and connect the dots a little bit in this conversation?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me in this conversation. Thank you all for having me with you on this conversation, and congratulations on your film. The power of film is exactly what you're talking about. You're able to show, change hearts and minds, explain to people what's really going on. So it's just such a powerful and important medium. So, you know, the United States is the most dangerous country in which to give birth of all industrialized nations. That's just a fact. That's a fact.
Did you all hear that?
It is,
I mean, just say it one more time.
Yeah.
You need to hear this and share this point.
The United States is the most dangerous country in which to give birth of all of the industrialized nations. And, you know, we talk about the Black maternal health rate in that Black women die at 2 to 3 times the rate of white women in this country. In some places, like here in New York, it can be 8 times the rate of white women. That is not the fault of Black women. That is because we live in a system that is designed not really to take great care of us. And Black women are dying at higher rates. But let's be clear, white women are not doing as well as they should be doing either. And I say that because even if you don't care about Black women's health, which you should, but even if you don't, you should be paying attention to it because it's a barometer for what's happening to everybody else here. And if you fix or solve the problem for those who are most vulnerable, you solve it for everyone. And as we talk about this conversation and we're talking about abortion care, when you talk about maternal mortality and morbidity, you're talking about maternal health. You're talking about women's health. And maternal health and abortion care are the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. It's what we see in this film, where women who are not well, who have a medical emergency, cannot get care. When we saw the overturning of Roe, we knew immediately that more women were going to be dying because they could not access the care that they needed if they have complications, much less if they choose to end a pregnancy for the betterment of their families and themselves, which goes to mental health as well. So these issues portend, it was really interesting. There was a line someone said in your film about when you're at a sonogram and you see the baby in the sonogram, you think it's your baby, but you realize that it's the state's baby. And that stuck out to me because we're in a country that was founded upon enslavement. Black women did not have, their babies were of the state. Slavery still persists today, and we're all in the boat. We're all in it. So when we talk about race and issues that come down to race, because Black women are devalued, don't get the treatment they need to be getting, that translates all the way down to every woman in this country. And so we're all in this boat together. So when you hear the issues about Black maternal health, I just hope that everyone understands it's not just about Black maternal health. It's about the health of our entire country. When we talk about abortion, we're really just talking about women getting access to the care that they really need.
Powerful statement. Yes, yes. You know, I so want first-time presidential election voters to make sure they're voting, because that could make a big difference. And I have a daughter who's one of them. She will be voting and she goes to school in Wisconsin and chose to vote there because we think it counts more than in New York. But I want to share a story. When she was heading to college, she's a junior, Roe v. Wade was reversed. And I had the news on, and she walked into the room, and it just happened that a screen popped up on the news naming the 7 states that immediately took away all reproductive rights care. Everything was gone. And she heard that, and at 18, she saw it, and she said, "Mommy, Wisconsin's on that list." And so her response was, "Well, if anything happens to me, I'm just going to get on a plane and come home." At least she knew she could, without any judgment. But we hadn't really even talked about abortion. And this was how it was introduced. You know, it was a scary experience. And what I learned subsequently in that state, and it's probably true in Texas and Arkansas and these other states, you know, to get birth control pills, you may not get the prescription filled. I'm sure you can get condoms, or but for what the man can have. But I'm curious, Molly, because that's the other side of it. You know, the what's happening for young people, what they're experiencing in terms of fear around just experiencing their fullness as they're growing into adults, given these laws.
Yeah, I mean, the anecdote you just gave about your daughter is happening in houses across the country. It is well documented that people are choosing colleges based on where healthcare is legal. It's having a particularly upsetting and disturbing impact on the medical community. Students don't want to go to medical school in states with abortion bans, not only because it's going to impact the care that they can provide, but think about the people who are residents. Those are people of childbearing age themselves. The board exams for OBGYNs are held in Texas every year. Did you know that? Yeah. What is it like to force every OBGYN in the country to go to Texas? Maternity wards are closing. We have a similar case to the one you saw in the film in Idaho, where maternity wards in all of the rural counties have been shut down. They have currently 4 MFMs, that's a maternal fetal medicine specialist, so who cares for high-risk pregnancies, 4 MFMs in the whole state.
And they had 9, right?
And they only had 9 to begin with.
Only had
That's
9
right.
to begin with when
That's
Roe
right.
fell.
So it's impacting everybody, and I think it's taken a slow time in some places for people to realize that. But abortion is not a niche issue. They're not going to stop there. Abortion is about control. It's about contraception. It's about IVF. It's about maternal health care. It's about same-sex marriage. They're coming for all of it, and I don't want to be alarmist, but it's just the truth. They're saying it out in the open. So, where was I going with this? Please vote.
And is it, Chelsea, again, looking through your lens, because you've lived at a certain level of seeing everything, how do you still have hope when we see what we see? And we see for this election even, I'm just going to say, it's shocking to me that it's close. It's just shocking, and I don't understand what people are seeing and what they're believing about their own life, and if they are understanding what power they have or don't have, that they're making the choices that they're making. So from your lens, which is international as well as very broadly American, what do you see and how do you keep hope?
So I'm going to answer that question in 2 ways, Harriette. I'm going to answer it partly kind of through kind of the trajectory of my own life, and then just sort of kind of how I choose to live my life. So on the former, as a kid who grew up in Arkansas in the 80s and the early 90s, I went to public school. I had age-appropriate sexual and reproductive health education. When I got to junior high school, it's been rebranded middle school, but so junior high, right? I knew that there were, condoms available in the school nurse's office. I knew someone when I was in 7th grade who was in 8th grade who'd had an abortion. I also, though, was in a public school system that had vaccination clinics, that had hearing and eye tests, that had nutritional information, where there was kind of, a roving mobile clinic that came and provided oral and dental health care for students who otherwise might not have been able to access that.
In Arkansas?
None of that exists today. Right, and so it's not only kind of the control that I think Molly spoke to so powerfully, it's also the purposeful disinvestment in our kind of public and civic infrastructure to better facilitate the control, in part. Now, I also, though, remember, as a kid in Arkansas, the first time I heard abortion, it was in Sunday school. I was 6 years old. I went 1 week to Sunday school with my mom at the Methodist Church and 1 week with my dad, who was a Baptist. And we had lunch together as a family, and I one day at lunch was like, what's abortion? And my parents were like, why are you asking? I was like, oh, well, they talked about it in Sunday school. I never went back to Sunday school at the Baptist Church. Fast forward, later, the Southern Baptist Convention actually kicked my father, kicked President Clinton and President Carter out of the church because of their support of abortion rights. But I share that because I I had a different lived experience as a child in Arkansas than what kids in Arkansas are experiencing today. And so either I can think, like, you know, time really is only linear and moves in one direction, either toward progress or kind of its opposite. Or I can think, if we were there before, we can hopefully not only return there, but actually have an even better, kind of more equitable, kind of more progressive in the old-fashioned sense, kind of, you know, public and civic infrastructure. And so that's how I choose to kind of think about it, rooted in my own lived experience. The second thing I would say is that I believe that optimism is fundamentally a moral choice. I can either kind of wake up every day and think, you know, what can I do to try to make even a very small difference in the small world of my family, kind of with my husband, my kids, you know, my community of friends, and in the broader world in which kind of we're living, or I can choose to not. And I think it is a healthier, more interesting, and more engaging way to choose to think, like, how can I make a difference and then act on that? And I would say, whenever I'm kind of feeling overwhelmed, I think, well, like, the greatest resource that the people who want to protect the status quo or want to continue to kind of drag us backward is our cynicism, is the belief that nothing can change. And so for me, optimism is not only a moral choice, it's a revolutionary choice. Because, like, I don't want to go back. I mean, I don't even want to live in this present. Like, I want the future to be radically different. And so it's both, as I think about my own life in what is today one of the reddest states in America, and what was very different about my childhood, and, you know, have moments too of levity, being like, wow, I remember when the Klan tried to come into Arkansas and my dad went with a bipartisan group of members of the Arkansas State Legislature and a wildly diverse kind of coalition of religious and civic leaders. And I'm like, and what would happen today? Would that still happen? Would Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders link arms with a bipartisan coalition and a wide diversity of religious and civic leaders? I'd like to hope so. I'd like to hope so. But I can't say that I know so. Right? So I think, all right, there are these moments of, like, levity in my kind of, you know, ecosystem of thinking about the world, but there's also this deep sense of, like, we have been in better places before. We should use that actually as grist to get us into an even better place in the future. And if I don't at least try, what does that say about me or what I think is possible? And then what power am I ceding to those who want to keep us all in the boat?
Thank you. That was powerful and a lot to unpack. You know, you said something that once again reminded me of my daughter, her first year. She's a psych major. And one of her classes, because that was just out of COVID, she was looking at on her computer. And her roommate from Chicago, so Midwest, but Chicago, it was a human sexuality class. And so her friend was watching with her and absolutely shocked by things that my daughter had learned in elementary school about human sexuality, and certainly by high school. What this young lady told my daughter is that what she was taught in high school as it relates to sex education was abstinence only. That's all that they learned in high school in Chicago, and that it was common in the Midwest. And also that condoms are 98% ineffective, like the exact opposite of what is true. And so my daughter observed a lot of kids coming to this huge campus, escaping their very controlling parents and acting irresponsibly because, whether they're having sex or not, they weren't using condoms because they didn't think they worked. And they were just blasting through any moral constraints they may have had because of probably a lack of education. And so, Maisie, I actually wanted to pose a question to you. As one of the things that we saw in the film was Samantha's son. She's talking to this little boy about what had happened, and trusting that he was smart enough and conscientious enough to understand. And so again, in storytelling, I'd like for you to talk about how you create storytelling and in the film you did so that we can see young people have the capacity to learn even when it's difficult. And, how might we share that kind of message? Because the messaging I just told you, these 18-year-olds coming to college were, at least some of them, learning something very different.
Well, thank you for pointing out that moment in the film. When we were filming, I remember my co-director, Abby, and I, after Samantha and her son had that conversation, we paused and were really in awe of the fact that an 11-year-old could understand something that people making these laws couldn't understand. And we kept that moment with us. That was one of the earlier things that we filmed. Throughout this film, knowing that it was going to be a very important moment in the film, and time and time again, we hear people picking up on that specific moment. And I think that if the rest of the world thought like this 11-year-old, then we'd all be in a better place. And something through this experience that I've seen all of the participants in this film, the plaintiffs in particular, they are having very open conversations with their children, with their families about what this means. And yes, I live in Texas. We have no sex education anymore, abstinence or not. And there are, I think what you said earlier, that condoms are more available. In our school systems now, you cannot get a condom, and you're encouraged not to. So there's so much misinformation out there, and I'm rambling now, but I do think that stories can be hugely impactful.
Thank you. Tanya, you and your husband make films. Tanya's husband, Spike Lee. And in your films and his, I see lessons. There's a lesson that comes through. There's a reason. Sometimes you get beat over the head with it, and sometimes not. But let's talk about your filmmaking abilities and how you use your films to share messages with the public.
Yeah, I think storytelling is of the most important that we can do. If you don't put it down, it's the record. Number one, it's the record. Number two, it helps us understand who we are, who we think we should be. It helps us see other cultures and other ways. And I happen to be a lawyer myself, and at one point thought I would be a civil rights lawyer. I always joke, though, that I would always cry. So no one wants a lawyer that cries all the time.
That is true.
Right. So I segued into a creative life and became a storyteller. And whether it's through our children's books. I wrote a children's book called Please Baby Please. It's basically the day in the life of a brown two-year-old with curly, spirally hair. That's impactful not only for Black children, but for white children to see oh, you're actually human, just like me. I think in some of the films and shows I've done, I try to tackle the issues of our time, social justice issues, whether it be civil rights, whether it be criminal justice, whether it be the maternal health issue. And I think, as I said earlier, storytelling is how we really change hearts and minds. And making Aftershock, the key to me was to humanize the women and families who had died from complications from childbirth. I often read the comments in the New York Times when there are articles written about these issues. And people say things like, oh, well, it's their fault, they're all obese, they're too old, they don't go get health care. And that's not the truth. That's not what we saw. That's not what we saw in the women we selected. We wanted to show that, these people, these women had families. They had people around them. They came from a community. They meant something to the people that were with them, and that there are solutions. I mean, from the maternal health side, what I see in this whole conversation, this country needs, and we all need, a cultural shift in how we deal and talk about birthing in general, right, in my opinion. Evidence-based solutions exist, like midwives. Every other industrialized country that has better outcomes than we do, midwives are integrated into women's health care. We're talking about the fact that people don't want to go into the medical profession, certainly not into OB-GYN care, because they're afraid that they're going to come up against laws. We're having a shortage of doctors, so maybe we should be looking at other ways in which we surround women for their care. So I think that the filmmaking and the storytelling has an ability for us to have these conversations so that we can begin to really think about what are the solutions? How do we get to a better place? How can we make for better outcomes? And the last thing I just want to say is that this cultural shift in the way we think about birthing, I think we all have a role to play in it, and we can all start. Like, for example, and no offense to any doctors here, but doctors do not deliver babies. Doctors don't deliver babies. Women birth babies. I can't stand, and God bless them, we need our doctors, but a doctor goes, oh yes, I delivered 1,500 babies. No, you did not. You assisted that woman who did the work of birthing this child, right?
Amen to that.
Let's start thinking about how we talk about the power that when a woman who decides that she wants to and is able to give birth, it's a rite of passage. It's not just about when the baby gets here. It's what does this woman go through. I had a midwife tell me, when a woman gives birth, she's not just birthing a baby, she's birthing a mother. So let's think about that. Let's nurture that through the process. Let's give ourselves the opportunity to really enjoy that, and let's work on the policies, the legislative policies, because our whole lives are policy, right? So let's work on the legislative policies that support women having the kind of births that they should be having.
Yeah, and I want to mention that we couldn't agree more, right? This is the other side of the coin for us. We have litigation to expand midwifery care ongoing as well, because the same states that have abortion bans have limited the ability of midwives, particularly to take care of Black and Indigenous communities. So it is the whole package.
And you talked about the closing of the maternity wards at all these hospitals. So now you're seeing all these maternal health deserts. Women can't even get care. I mean, don't get me started on my anger about that, because doctors came in, took the profession from midwives years ago, then decided they were going to do better. We all had to go to the hospitals, built hospitals. Now they realize the hospitals aren't making money, so they're taking the hospitals out of the communities, and now women have no care. So
I just want to add on that, on a personal note, I live in the middle of nowhere, Texas, in Marfa, Texas. When I was pregnant in 2021, we had to relocate because our hospital shut the maternity ward on the weekends. So we had to
because babies are only born
right.
Monday through Friday.
Exactly. So we had the privilege to be able to relocate to Austin temporarily, but many women out there do not and have to get flown out by helicopter to a bigger city just to, birth their child, and they are in active labor when that is happening, and then they have to, figure out how to work that out with either their insurance or pay it out of pocket.
I mean, think of that. She had to move. This was just a couple of years ago. All this stuff is happening now. It's not like history. It's in this moment. It's really incredibly powerful. Yes.
Can I just want to add, a few points to, I think, what Tanya said so powerfully, which is that we also do need men here as not just like allies and advocates, but as leaders in this effort. I have found it extraordinary to watch Giselle Pellicotte in France with kind of the sterling courage to continue to assert that the shame of her husband spending 10 years drugging her to facilitate at least 80 men to rape her while she was unconscious, and collecting 20,000 images of that heinous, violent defilement. That's not her shame. That's their shame. And there have been a lot of articles written about how like every day that she comes to court, there are increasingly, like there were first like dozens and there were hundreds, now there are thousands, now there are tens of thousands of people who come. But what I find so powerful is how many families are showing up, right? That it's not only like women of our age, it's mothers bringing their children, and it's husbands and fathers accompanying like those wives and mothers and children. And we need that here in this country because we cannot do this alone. And I do think, just at the risk of belaboring this, it is so important that we continue to center women. I mean, I remember I once was trying to kind of get more funding for building more midwifery care here in the United States, and through like a friend of a friend, someone was like, oh yeah, come, like, you know, tell me about what you're doing. And the opening salvo was like, I'm so excited to learn about this innovation. And I was like, I'm sorry, it's the oldest profession. Like, I know we say that's sex work, but it's actually like midwifery. Like, where do you think we all came from? Right. But it just had never occurred to him. So I think anything that we can do, particularly kind of with the men who understand that this affects you too, while also hopefully being kind of morally urgent, to reorient around kind of women and to center us, because the overwhelming majority of midwives are also women, I think is really important, and we need you.
Yeah. A couple things, then we're going to go to questions. In these two films, we just saw one, I think it's important to let people know the humanity of the folks who we saw in the film, who they are. I think a lot of stereotypes got broken by just looking, including hearing about eating disorder, right? And having that described, and then seeing a woman of color and what her life was like in a family where she had a husband and he was there. We often, the stereotype is that they're not there. In Tanya's film, seeing Black women and Black men who are smart and articulate and just really connect, and the men connecting with each other. When you see our actual stories, then the stereotypes can wash away. And I think films help to make that happen, which is why these two films are so important. We would like to take a few questions. So, okay, all right. So there are a lot of questions. So here are the rules. Question, not soliloquy. Name, question. We'll start in the front row, Karen. And can we share a mic? Yes. Yeah, if you can come to the front row. We'll go, yeah, we'll start with Karen. You can please say your name, but then your question.
Karen Chambers. My question is, from making this film, do you have any further insight as to what is the intention of the government in terms of putting these laws in place? Like, I can understand there are certain right-wing initiatives that have some kind of an economic advantage, but I don't see the advantage for the lawmakers. Do you have any more insight as to what's the end game with this? Why is this happening?
Sure. And I should have said earlier, just to be clear, in case my general counsel is listening somewhere, I work for a 501c3, and so everything I say is in my personal capacity. I think the cruelty is the point. I think it's about power, and I think they truly don't care. I mean, when we first filed the case, there was certainly, I wanted to win, and I thought they might settle, right? If they say that exceptions should really exist and people in true emergencies should be getting care, then why not enter into a consent decree with us and say, okay, yeah, you're right, these women should have gotten care. No, they doubled down because they don't care if people die. I think that abortion bans are used as a political tool to galvanize a certain politics that helps a certain minority of people in this country maintain control and money. I honestly think that that's what it's about, because you watch this and it is clear exceptions to abortion bans don't work, and they were never intended to, and no one who says that they are anti-abortion is doing anything to stop it because they don't care. And I wish that wasn't the case. I am a hopeful, optimistic person. I couldn't get up every day and do this if I was otherwise. But, that sort of cruelty that you saw, I have seen that play out for 10 years. And I keep going back, like Lucy with the football, thinking this time it'll be different. When we filed Kate's case, I thought, well, surely this time they'll agree. No. So I'm left with, that's the only conclusion I can draw.
Thank you. Terry?
Hi, Terry Agans. This was incredible. Maisie, what has been the reaction of men who've watched this movie?
I think that's a great question. Thank you. I think a lot of men, if they have not had this experience in their personal relationships, are surprised to learn that this could have such a large effect and impact on them. And I've had, Amanda's brother came to a screening recently, and we got to go to dinner afterwards. And he talked about how, after having experienced what Amanda went through, multiple of his friends, he's had conversations with many of them, multiple of them have actually decided to change the way they're going to vote, and they did not realize that something like this could happen to their partner, right? Because abortion, I think there is this total misconception of what abortion is and who is seeking abortion care. And so I'm very optimistic that men are starting to recognize that this impacts them too.
Did you want to say something?
Well, less than 1% of abortions happen after 21 weeks, right? And the overwhelming majority of those are for heartbreaking medical necessity. And so we also live in this miasma of purposeful kind of mis and disinformation around what abortion actually looks like in this country, and why women choose or have to kind of seek abortion care. And I think that is a real, I think that's a reality that we have to recognize and continue to reckon with. While we center the stories that I think ultimately change hearts and minds, we also have to be mindful of what the actual statistics are around abortion in America.
There's a film that Donna has also been supporting, Red, White, and Blue, which at one of the panel discussions, we learned that almost all women who have abortions have children. So this sense of recklessness and whatever people put on that, often it's because they cannot afford to take care of another child, and the government doesn't help with that, by the way, and or health concerns are quite common. I think Susan has the mic, and then we'll come to you. Yeah.
Hello, ladies. My name is Susan Moses, and my question is, what can we do to remove the heavy stigma on the word abortion and the ignorance around it? Because there's still, when you read the blogs and the conversation, it's still, well, if she didn't go out and have sex before marriage, she wouldn't need an abortion. So there's still a lot of ignorance and really heavy stigma. Is that a campaign? Is that a film? Is it just more, is it more educational films? Because I think we really need to keep talking about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's all of the above. You spend 5 minutes with me, I say abortion every other word. That is intentional, because it's just healthcare, and I want people to understand that. But I think talking about abortion and miscarriage more openly is a critical part of it, and I think storytelling is huge, right? You see this, and this is what abortion looks like, and it helps people understand.
Kay. Yeah, he's going to bring you the mic.
Kay Unger, and this was just incredible. So all my other questions were answered, but this film was so amazing. What can we do with this in 10 days? Because if this could get out and we could help in any way, and the fact that you bring up that having had a miscarriage and knowing all about these things, it's the middle of the road. It is a story of our health, not about necessarily having had sex and shouldn't have. It's a way to reach so many people who might be pro-life. And this is amazing, but what can we do in 10 days?
I think that's a great question. I'm very excited to share with everyone here that we are putting the film out for a virtual watch party over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. If you go to our website, zurawskivtexas.com, you can find a link for the virtual watch party and sign up there. It is free, and we are asking people to invite friends over, maybe invite just a couple of people who you think need to see this so that they are comfortable and come. Whoever it is, invite them in your life. Just share the movie. We just want people to see it, which is why we made the urgent decision to put it up and get it out for free over the weekend.
Can you put that slide up, please? We made a slide that has and we made a QR code for you.
Great, thank you so
for
much.
The
Please
viewing
share on social media.
for the weekend, and also if you'd
I
like to
love that
support the
picture of
film,
you.
there's a QR code where you can support the film. And we're going to take 2 more questions. One is here. We're going to take a picture. You can continue to talk. Nicole, you'll be next. We don't have to leave. Donna, you have a question too? Okay, hold on. Okay, I have somebody standing. Give me that, and then we'll come to you, okay? All right.
Thank you for allowing me to have some input. My name is Michael Tyler. First thing I want to do is apologize to Chelsea Clinton. We sat on a panel a few years ago, leadership panel in Arkansas, and I promised you cookies. I will get them to you.
Wasn't sure where that was going. Okay.
I will get them to you at some point. I just want to add a male insight that I hope will help all of this. When slavery existed in this country and we had the constitutional amendment to get rid of it, there weren't any black people in Congress. We needed white Americans to come through on that effort. 104 years ago, when women didn't have the right to vote, there weren't any women in Congress. So we needed men to come through on that. The point I'm trying to make is all those issues and the issue that we have going on right now deal ultimately with the bodily autonomy of people. Can they have control over their own bodies for their own purpose of self-determination? And as long as that is an issue, we will continue to have the dehumanization of people. And for us to get rid of the insanity and the humanity and the inhumanity that's going on, we have to get men, and it's a challenge to all men out here, to stop thinking about gender. What does it mean to be human is the question that we have to ask. It's the question that we have to answer. And until we ask that question and answer it, the dehumanization of women will continue to go on. That's what we have to get at.
All right, thank you. Can we bring the microphone to Donna, please?
Thank you. This movie is extraordinary. The story is extraordinary. The fact that we are watching this and needing to is more upsetting than anything else, because this should not be a political problem. This is free for every single person. So we've asked today for all of us to get in front and talk. What do we want for the world that we're living in today? It's very concerning to all of us, truly. Abortion rights are personal, not political. We need gun control for the safety of our children and our families. Phone addiction. If there's anything more worried about than I am, is the addiction of the phone and children going out and not feeling good enough and aborting, killing themselves. The phone addiction, there are good reasons and bad. Children, we do not want to have them on the phone and be addicted. How many people do you see sitting at a dinner table, phone in hand, phone in hand? Yes, they're taken from our parents and how they control us. But then what happens in schools become another situation. Phones should not be allowed in schools, and the tech as well. We need health care. Where is the care in health care? We've discussed this so much with children right now, and us, and abortions. And what does it take to have a child? Affordable housing. The fact that we have a man running for president right now who is a dictator is unacceptable. And we're at a 50-50% is a shock. I don't know what more to say right now, but I would like us all to get up and say what you feel is the most important things to deal with right now. This movie is extraordinary. I want to see it again and again and again. I want to get it out there as much as I can. Thank you for being able to put it out there on the 27th, and that's very important. And I'd also love you to see, if you have not seen, Red, White, and Blue. An extraordinary, extraordinary film. One mother, one daughter. The daughter, and I should not be saying this, but I'm going to say it. The daughter was pregnant. She was raped. A 25-minute film. If this is the world we're living in right now, where is the calm and the chaos of the world we live in today? And I want to be the happiest person and laugh and joy with the children and everything. And this movie is so, so important, but even more important is each and every one of you, and God bless you for being here today. And anytime you want to get her together, to be around, this place is urban zen. How do we find the calm in the chaos of the world we live in today? And you weren't there at the time, but when I did speak, your father was the first person who received the Apple Award right here, and then your mom. So to me, and you're coming next, there's an apple waiting for you.
Thank you.
But if they've shared the apples with you, the family cares. And what I've learned to be who I am today is because of the Clinton Global Initiative.
Thank you, Donna.
And I thank you from the bottom of my heart, because that Clinton Initiative is about all of us. Every single one of us all over the world. And I cannot thank you enough, Chelsea. God bless you.
Oh gosh, well, Donna, thank you. I just want to say, I think a lot of us here think that a lot of people know things they don't know because they purposely haven't been taught or told. They haven't been informed, so then it's hard to then kind of actually be empowered with the knowledge that I think anyone in this country deserves to make choices at the ballot box. So I would just say thank you again to Donna and to everyone at Urban Zen. I know even events that are small and mighty in number take enormous amounts of work. So just thank you to everyone who helped bring us together. And I just think we have, like you asked us each to talk about what's important, like we just have to vote. We have to talk to as many people as we can between now and November 5th. And early voting starts tomorrow here in New York. So, maybe share our movie and go vote tomorrow. And it's also my mom's birthday, so.
All right.
A great reason to vote.
Good way to celebrate.
Quick one, Molly.
Yeah, I just want to say this is something I remind myself, and it feels urgent because of the election, but life will go on regardless of who wins, and we have to have the endurance to keep going and fighting for the people who can't. So just keep that in mind.
All right. Thank you, Molly, Chelsea, Maisie, Tanya, Donna. Thank you for bringing so much joy.
Thank you.
Thank you.